All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Evernest Real Estate Investor Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Spencer Sutton, and I'm joined by my co-host, my only co-host, I think, Gray. I
I've
think
been
we've just like,
upgraded.
you've been
Not
upgraded
one of the co-hosts. We've just been upgraded to co-host.
to co-host, not one of the co-hosts. Soon you'll have the title CEO of Evernest. And so
And I mean, I got to change. I'm going to take co-host from Matthew's LinkedIn, and then we're coming for the CEO after that. So
does he actually have that on his LinkedIn?
he does, but he doesn't show up half the time. So I think we're going to have to, we'll get
We'll
him to
have
remove
to,
that.
yeah, we'll get him to remove that. We'll put you as co-host. I don't even think I have anything about that on my, anyway, LinkedIn. All right, that's not what we're here to talk about, but I'm glad you're here, Gray. We've got a special guest on the show with us. We have David Berardi. And David, man, welcome to the show, a brand new investor, and we're excited to dive into your story and hear more about what you're doing.
Yeah. Thank you guys for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. So why don't we kick off, David? We're glad you're here. Why don't we kick off? Just kind of tell us a little bit about what you do, like where in the country you are, because we do have a lot of investors that are obviously out-of-state investors and people who are not buying in their home state. So talk a little bit about where you are, what you currently do, and how this journey started for you into real estate.
Yeah, definitely. So I am based here in Manhattan, in New York City. I've been here for about 8 years because I actually went to school here. I went to NYU. And that's kind of what kicked off my real estate, I guess, itch. When I was a sophomore at NYU, one of my friends actually, saw how people were renting apartments, saw the fees they were paying, and said, why don't we start, a student brokerage, right? Rent to all of our friends, so then that'll be our fees. So my sophomore year started doing brokerage. And I ended up doing that for about 3-4 years, where I would just do rentals, 60, 80, 100 rentals a year.
That's a pretty big market in New York. And I think that's like one of the only market, like what is just kind of general structure? Like why do renters need an agent?
Oh yeah. It's just, I think the big thing is the supply and demand. There's, 1 to 3% of apartments are vacant at any given time. And if you're, a 21-year-old looking to move to the city, you're competing with everyone from every major bank that just graduated, everyone that graduated from colleges. It's just like, there's so much demand and such little supply. And I think you have so many people coming from out of state that, you don't want to wind up in a horrible neighborhood. So they rely on brokers a lot.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I mean, it's an overwhelming thing, but like moving to a city like Birmingham or Denver, it's a little bit easier to get the lay of the land, but it's such a dense city that it makes sense. And man, what an awesome thing to do while you're in college, make a little side money.
Yeah. So that was how it started. And then after I graduated, and what I currently do now, I got into kind of more like tech sales. I wanted to start a kind of, career trajectory. And actually what I do is focused around real estate owners and operators, right? So like I sell into property owners, property managers, which even furthered my kind of like passion and exploration for real estate. So that's really, it's always just been something I've loved. And I think as someone who's out of state, it was, as someone that's based in New York, it was like, it would be impossible for me to buy something here, essentially. Right. So then I think for the past few years, my thought was like, all right, I want to buy a place, but can't do it here. And if I want to do another market, I have to find like a whole slew of things, brokers, managers, construction, inspectors. And it was just like daunting.
Yeah, it's pretty overwhelming. There's just like a lot of pieces because it's like hey, you save up all this money from college and kind of working this job, and you get this like chunk of change, and it's a pretty intimidating thing to like go, pick a new market from Google, and then who do I talk to? Who do I trust? Like, how do you kind of fit all those pieces together? Talk about kind of like the people on your team, and we connected. You bought it through Evernest, and so that's kind of how you got it connected. But kind of talk about the members of the team and what that process was like.
Yeah, and even how you did the research. Like, how did you determine who those people are going to be?
Yeah, so like fortunately, I feel like I'm in a kind of rare position with my job where I have probably talked to 3,000 property managers over the past 3.5 years, right? Yeah. So like, it's not, that piece was kind of easier for me to gauge. And I remember first reaching out to Evernest for my work in 2020, and just thinking like, this is such an innovative, like tech friendly kind of like it stood out to me, right? so when I was actually looking to buy a house, and Gray, when we met a few months ago and you kind of walked me through the process, it just made so much sense. So like my big thing, like I said, was assembling this team. And with you guys, it was easy because you connected me with Justin Jones, who was my broker, right? So I really like Birmingham as a market, just because I think like Nashville, Charlotte, like all these markets have been bought up, and a lot of them like institutionally bought up, which I don't really want to compete with. So I liked how Birmingham was like kind of this up and coming tertiary market. And Justin, having lived there for 20 years or however long he's lived there, was just like such a resource on the front end, right? As like a first time home buyer, but also like an Alabama native. So he was awesome. Like if I needed an inspection, he knew 4 people that could do it. Like, so he lined all of that up, which was awesome. And then on the management side, Danielle is going to ultimately manage the property, but I was actually like, I didn't even realize that Hunter who does business development for you guys, is this like really cool in between where he's not managing the property, but like he'll answer any question you need. And I didn't even know that you guys had that as, like a position, but I think it's such a cool, like onboarding, like liaison.
Yeah. And so what he's kind of talking about is, so we, a lot of PM companies, but us as well, is we've got business development managers. So they're kind of first point of contact for new investors or for people who already have properties and have questions about property management. A lot of what he does is people who are self-managing or maybe with another PM company. And so he's the first kind of point of contact. And so we've got that in a lot of our markets, but yeah, they can connect you. I mean, that's probably the best place to like reach out if you are reaching out to, Evernest, going to the BDM, they can kind of connect through there. And they do a good job of connecting. Talk about you. I think when you and I, you had a couple markets, like talk about the process of like exploring different markets, because that can be an intimidating thing. There's a ton of different markets. You can read like, blogs and all this kind of stuff about top markets. Like what things did you like about Birmingham or like markets similar to that when you were doing research, before pulling the trigger?
Yeah, I think, so I explored a few different markets. I was looking at kind of like the South Florida market. I was looking at Birmingham. And I was looking at just kind of like random markets like Nashville and everything like that. And what it really came down to for me was, I think, the price point and the affordability as a first-time investor. Like when I was looking outside of St. Pete's, for example, you can't really buy an investment property for under $300,000, right? So that's just, it's for your first deal, it's a lot to have to put in to invest as you're figuring everything out. So I really, really like Birmingham because you can get in for 100, 120, 150,000, where it's kind of like this stomachable amount. And then if you want to, you can buy 200, 240, 250, where it's, nicer product, higher rents and everything like that. So ultimately that's kind of why I went to Birmingham. Between that, the rent growth, you kind of see that in all those markets.
Yeah.
But I feel like also like the rent growth is not as crazy or as drastic as like a South Florida or a Nashville. So it's like the next up.
Yeah. When you and I were talking, it was kind of like, there's markets where it's kind of like boom and bust, where it's kind of just like over the past 2 years, we're recording this in 2022, it's kind of gone up and to the right. And like, will that continue? There's markets like Birmingham. I think we talked about Little Rock. I think Memphis, like all kind of similar markets where you can get in at that 100 to 150 range. They have similar fundamentals in terms of like property, like HPA growth, but also it's like just a lot more steady. And I think you kind of like liked that it hadn't been, completely up into the right, like a market like Phoenix. Like we've seen that market go up by 40%. And in the last crisis, it kind of like went down. And so I think you were kind of looking at first, like, hey, how much cash do I have available? So I think it's the first place to start is, hey, if I've got 25K, okay, levered up, that can maybe get me to, $90,000. If I got 50K, you can go up to about 200K. Kind of picking markets that fit that is probably the first place. And then starting to get into, hey, is it growing? Are there good pockets? Because I think the reality is in a lot of these markets, you could have found a deal. Like, did you feel like that when you were kind of like looking through different markets?
Yeah, I think I could have found a good deal. Honestly, it also, wanting to go through you guys, it also made me feel more comfortable knowing you guys are a Birmingham-based company. Justin was a Birmingham, like knowing there was such a strong presence there made me comfortable too, as opposed to just like foraying into a new market or a different market, like on my own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you were kind of like, talk about the process. So you got connected with Justin. We've got local agents, a lot of these markets.
Yeah.
Like, what's the difference in working with, investor focused agent versus just kind of a traditional agent?
Yeah. For me, that was really, really important, right? Because, if I went to like any other market, I'd kind of be on my own to find a broker, and you never know what their kind of thought process is or their goal. They're just trying to help you find a house, right?
Yeah.
And I am looking for an investment property, so I wanted someone to have that mindset, to where like the numbers work. It's not a guessing game, right?
Yeah.
So like you guys provided me with like a kind of a underwriting tracker that I could actually analyze all the houses, all the costs, the expenses, the rent, everything like that. And then going through a broker that had that investment mindset was really, really important, because they'll know what deals will work and won't work. They'll know what you could push rents to. And that's how they're thinking. They're thinking as an investment, as opposed to just like, buying another home. So that was so important to me. And also that was for a short-term kind of like goal, buying one house. But as I told Justin, this is a long-term game for me. Like a big thing is going to be scaling this. So I really liked how I can say, here are my goals. How can we both accomplish them over 5 years, 10 years?
Yeah. And what are your goals? I mean, you're obviously going to be able to kind of dig into that. Like, what was the process before? We've talked about that in the podcast of like, it is good to start with kind of an end in mind. And so what was your process to kind of like figure out your goals, what you wanted, and kind of how did you build that plan?
Yeah. I would say I could probably bake it out a little bit more. The big thing was, like you said before, I just wanted to get in the game. I just wanted to go 0-1. That was my goal with this one. But my end goal is I'm 26 right now. I want to have 10 homes by the time I'm 30. And just slowly start to scale. And another one of my goals, like in doing that, is I feel like I have a lot of people in my position where, you might have a good income, you're living in a major metro, you have spare cash, and everyone wants to get into real estate, but no one knows how. So eventually, like, starting a small fund, starting to JV with people, is high up on my list of things to do as well.
Talk about.
I love it's not fleshed out, and I love that you just took action. I mean, I think you can have the best like laid plan, but you're going to get a ton more experience just by even like going through the process of getting a mortgage and going through the home inspection process. And so like, I think these plans can always be refined. So it's good to start with the end in mind, but also don't get bogged down too much where it's like, that's limiting you from like taking any sort of action.
Yeah.
But also I noticed, like, David, you're in sales, so you're used to taking the initiative, right? So this is probably comes a little bit more natural to you than some other people who are a bit more conservative by nature. They want to do all the analysis. Not that you didn't do your homework and you didn't do your analysis, but some people are probably a little bit, planning it out a little bit more. But I'm curious about, because Birmingham, I've grown up in Birmingham my whole life. Gray has lived here for a long time as well. He's now in Denver, but talk about how you settled on, like, how did Justin walk you through like neighborhoods, areas? Like, how did you decide, hey, this is where we need to be?
Yeah. So actually both Gray and Justin kind of gave me an overview of the neighborhoods, which was really helpful, where to buy, where not to buy. And honestly, it might sound, I don't want to downplay it, but for me, it was just a lot of trust. Like if the numbers work out and you're telling me this is a good neighborhood and a good home and everything like that, I'm kind of in, so I did obviously my research. But for me, it's really like, do the numbers work? This market, I think that would tell me a lot more than any research I could do. So it's a lot of trust.
So have you come to Birmingham yet?
No, it's on my list of things to do. I need to.
Yeah, you need to. That's one of the things we talk about on here. Come visit the markets, whatever market you're going to buy in.
Yeah, no, I definitely need to, especially as I expand. But I think that says a lot that I didn't need to.
Yeah, it's not like a requirement. I've seen it help people get over that hump to go 0-1. Yeah. You might be a little bit more risk tolerant, but seeing some people, like we had one of our other, Clay, he had 3 guys come out from California. They drove around. Initially, they're like, maybe sometime next year. They drove around and they're like, oh, we feel so much more comfortable now. Yeah. Let's start making offers and kind of like pull the trigger. And for like, call it, $600 to $1,000, that's like pretty good risk mitigation to, you like roll that off and like, hey, this market's not for me, or this agent's not for me. But like, it's a pretty good thing if people needed to do that. Like, I don't think it's a bad investment.
No, not at all. I totally agree with you. Yeah.
So let's talk about the deal. Kind of walk us through how you found the deal. Justin, I think, had this listed, but kind of walk through the deal, walk through kind of underwriting, what the numbers tell you, and kind of talk about that process.
Yeah, yeah. I apologize if my dog starts barking here. She's growling a little bit.
That's all right.
Yeah, so this deal, it was so kind of my strike zone was like 100 to 150,000, something that would rent for anywhere from 1,100 to 1,500 was the goal.
Mhm.
And so we were looking at a few homes, a little bit higher price points. And one of the things I'd say is like I didn't realize kind of all the fees, the closing costs, everything when I was in that price point, right? Initially, I was like, let me find something for 240. And then when you add on closing costs, fees, everything like that, I was like, okay, we're going to scale it back a little bit for the first one. So strike zone was like 1 to 150. And I've been working with Justin. He'd send me listings every day. We'd send them back and forth. We would talk about neighborhoods, prices, this one's occupied, this one's not. And then he texted me one day and was like, I have the perfect one for you. It's a new listing I'm about to get. No one's even seen it yet. It's already occupied. It was on the market for 135, which was like right in that sweet spot. Already has a tenant in place who's been there, paid rent for 3 years, which is awesome. And I really, really liked how he had the listing, because then it opens you up a little bit more to, obviously there's dual agency, but you get a little bit more knowledge on like, all right, what did the original owners put into it? What have they done? Has the renter been a good renter? It's just an easier transaction. So again, like that made me trust the process more, right? Because then everyone's interests are kind of aligned.
Yeah. And you did two things like mitigate risk. Like the number one risk is, one of them, vacancy. So you buy the property, you got to maybe do a little bit of work. You got to wait 30 days, let the tenant move in. Buying an already occupied property, one, decreases the risk, but two, if they've got a 3-year track record of paying on time, further decreases, delinquency rent. And then if you're listing the property, and I think we manage this property, we've got years of maintenance history. So we kind of like know what has been done. So you eliminated like a lot of the risks. Now, like every house is not going to be like that, but it's probably it made it probably easier to pull the trigger on this.
100%. 100%. Cause even, you can do your rent comps all day, but you still have to find a renter, still have to, everything like that. So to know that they're in place, one, and two, to be honest, they're probably a little bit below market rent. So if the deal works out with this renter in place, either you can bump it up and then that's pure revenue, or they move out and then you can bump it up. Like it's kind of a win-win in that regard. So like the numbers were working with this rent that I think is a little bit under. So it was just like a win-win-win, I thought.
Yeah, like as long as it's not like significantly under with like a 4-year lease, like that's not a bad place. You also got like a long-term mindset. You're like, hey, if I hold this 10 years and they're under rented by $200 for a year, like that's $2,400. Like that's real money.
Yeah.
But you didn't have to put any. Did you have to put any money like repairs or kind of off the bat?
No, not off the bat. Because again, they're already living there, right? So obviously stuff will pop up, but it's not like there's these kind of like huge red flag things that it's not livable.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Like right off the bat, and it probably felt good that he was like, "Hey, I got the perfect one for you," because he knew your buy box.
Nobody's seen it. So
That's some good salesmanship.
I was about to say Justin's a good salesman too.
Yeah. No, it worked well, and then again, it gave me confidence. Like in the negotiation process, I ended up getting it for 123 because there were some things in the inspection that we fixed, and it was like a very kind of like peaceful negotiation where it was like, hey, I think they want to do this. Do you want to give here or there, and everything like that. So I ended up getting an even better deal than I would hope on it. And again, like there was in the inspection, it came up that the electric might need some work. So that day, Justin had a guy in there to take a look at it, quote me a price, everything like that. Like I could not have done that on my own.
Yeah, no doubt.
Looking through the phone book, just trying to find somebody. But like getting a hard number like that is super helpful because you can go back and say, hey, we already got an estimate. This is the price reduction that we need. And it makes the negotiation process a lot easier when your agent has those kind of resources to get different vendors out there. It just gives you some more negotiating power.
Yep. Yeah.
So what area is this property in?
So this is in Bessemer.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So that's like on the west side of town.
It is.
And is it how big is it? Is it a 3-bedroom?
It's a 3-1. It's about 1,500 square feet.
Okay, that's pretty good size for 3-bedroom. I mean, that's got enough for like a living room, probably a dining room, decent sized kitchen, a couple decent sized bedrooms.
Yeah, no, it's not bad. And again, like it worked even with interest rates so high. So that gives me a lot of hope too, because if you look, part of it is like, I wanted to find a property that would cash flow and appreciate, right?
Yeah.
Like right now, you're probably pretty hard pressed in a lot of markets to find something that's cash flowing a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So like if it works now with a little under market rent, the goal is like refi in 2 years, and then your profit's shooting up.
But you're not banking on that, which I think I like, because we don't know what the Fed's going to do, and maybe high interest rates for the next 3 years.
Sure. Yeah.
You can sit back and basically do nothing, and it's still okay. But it's got the upside where pay down some of the mortgage, you refi, you get a lower rate, in the 5s or something. So I think it's a great plan. But talk about that. I mean, I think that's one thing I'm hearing a lot from investors is putting them on the sidelines. I think one, interest rates, but two, kind of fear of that causing home prices to go down. So how are you thinking about that as you were looking?
Yeah. So as I was looking, I feel like I was a little bit before everything started peaking. I mean, I still got a really high rate. But again, for me, like, I just wanted to get in the game. It's a long game. So like my perspective was like, if I'm paying a point or two higher for a year and I'm not in the red, like, I don't really care. And to be honest, like my goal is to buy another house in the next 2 months. I know interest rates are high. I think that'll be a good way to get a good deal, to be honest. If everyone is sitting on the sidelines and you can get 10% off because of that, that's the difference in the interest rate being high. And then you just refi in 2, 3, 4, whatever it is. So I personally think it's going to make it a good environment to do deals. If you find someone that needs to sell, because there's not going to be as many buyers.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I've been kind of like just listening and reading. I think there's a lot of difference between 08 and now. But I do think there's probably a window for the next, 3 to maybe 6 months where homes are sitting on the market. Buyers have a lot more leverage. And I've seen some stuff go under contract at pretty hefty, discounts. Maybe it was overlisted, but like you can still get the good basis in there to basically account for the higher interest rate.
Yep. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And the thing is, if you own it and you think home prices are going to go down, again, it's a long game. And to be honest, like part of why I'm excited to be investing in real estate is like what I've been doing for the last 3 years is putting my money in the stock market, which is down 48% because I have all tech stocks, versus like if this market in Birmingham crashes, maybe it'll go down 10%. Like maybe. I still think there's going to be demand for that. So it's like, if you don't have to sell immediately, I don't think it even matters.
Yeah, Birmingham weathered. So back in 2008, during the crash, it weathered the storm really, really well. So what we ended up having was, I mean, you saw a little bit of price fluctuation on the rents, but not a lot. But what you had investors who were way over leveraged and just needed to get out. So what happened was all like the foreclosures just ramped up. I don't think we're seeing that right now.
No.
But I do think you're going to see people who own houses, if they have that in their mind, what happened in 2008, they're going to be more likely to make a deal if they think, oh my goodness, it's time to sell. I got to get out. So you will find deals. I 100% believe that.
I'm already starting to see it. I have like all my notifications set up and you're starting to see price cuts and everything like that, which I'm thrilled about. If I can get a good deal, I'll buy all day right now.
Yep.
So you still looking for your next one right now?
Yeah. That's the goal.
I love it. Already, you closing this a month ago?
Yeah, I think October 19th or something.
Yeah.
Wow, less than a month from when we're recording this. That's great.
Yeah.
What would, and you've kind of given a lot, but like going back, newer investor who was kind of in your shoes a couple of years ago, like what are 1 or 2 pieces of advice that you would kind of get, biggest pieces that helped you go from 0 to 1?
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things. I think the first thing is like if you talk to anyone, I feel like it's very cliche at this point, but the thing that they'll say about real estate investing is like, I wish I did it earlier. Right? Like I could have bought a house 4 years ago and I'm sure I would have done much, much, much better. So part of that was like me kicking myself, like, why am I in the stock market? Why have I not been buying real estate? So that's the first thing. Like it's a long game. You just get in. And I guess piggybacking off that, the second thing was I kind of had this like aha moment that like, and maybe it sounds cavalier, but like, what's the worst that can happen? Right? Like the worst case is I buy this house and for whatever reason, if I have to sell it, I'll sell it in 3 months, 4 months for the same price, probably. Maybe you end up paying some fees, but like my actual risk is pretty low if you find a good deal in a good market. And then the last thing is like, it's a learning experience, right?
Yeah.
Like this is me dipping my toe in the water. So even if I break even on this house, like I am happy because now I understand how the process works, what I need to do. And it could save me 10 or 50 or $100,000 in the future, finding a good deal and being able to put my capital to work.
Yeah. And I think like not to hear like, hey, do a bad deal just to do a deal.
Oh,
but
no.
Like, you're using fixed debt. It's fixed rate. It's 30-year amortization. I think it was like all the foreclosures came from like adjustable rate. So like, right, you're already decreasing risk right there. You've got a good job. You've got some cash savings. You got some reserves. So like worst case, something happens to the house and you need to sell it. Like maybe you take a haircut on some fees, but like you learn so much just even going through mortgage application and what are rates and origination points and what do I look at on the inspection? How do I negotiate this? How does property management work? How to read the statement? How do I analyze deals? Like all of that's kind of a paid education. And that's what a lot of people on their flips, like they'll break even on their first flip. And a lot of people are excited because it's like so much of a learning process where like, at least I didn't lose money. And there's like, I think kind of a lower risk with like long-term rentals. So I think that's a great piece of advice, like writing out what actually is my risk on a dollar amount. Can I stomach that? Because you could also risk it in crypto and stocks, like the same risk kind of like anywhere. If you're going to build wealth, you've got to invest and take some risk. But I think it's good to kind of like quantify that and put it on paper. Like this is my risk. I'm okay with this. And I think the upside's a lot greater if you can do that.
Yeah. And kind of like you said, with the crypto and stock market, part of this is like, I want to control my financial future. And I think that you can do that by finding good deals, good fundamentals, everything like that, versus like the stock market, cryptocurrency, anything like I just want to have a slow and steady way to control my financial future. So if I can buy 2-3 houses a year for the next 5 years, and I have 10 houses, 15 houses cash flowing, like I'll be thrilled.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love it's a long game. You're right. That's it. And it's not, so many people want some quick win. And we've said this on the podcast. It is a get rich slow game that we're playing. And so, great advice for anybody listening. Don't get caught up in the interest rates as much and all those. So, it's good.
Yeah.
All right, Dave. Well, thanks a ton for coming on. You laid out a great model for newer investors. If people do want to get in touch with you, is that okay with you? And what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to share my email and phone with them. Happy to talk with anyone about this. I really love this stuff. And again, I just went through it a month ago, so it's nice and fresh. So happy to talk to anyone and everyone.
Cool. We'll throw that in the show notes. Y'all can reach out to David and pick his brain on how to go from 0 to 1.
All right, everybody. Thanks for being here on the podcast, and we'll be back next week with another episode of the Evernest Real Estate Investor Podcast.